Yeah, it really fits to the.
Area, so.
Really fits to the.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, welcome everybody to the discussion. How it's called, See the Future, Lithuanian-Italian Architectural Dialogue. Our talk is hosted by the Biennale Architektura 2025 GENS public program. And the talk is presented by the Lithuanian National Institute of Architecture. And the idea of this talk or dialogue is to discuss what I consider maybe the most important Cs in the Europe, and which are sometimes forgotten as a part of maybe architecture. So our speakers today are Adriana Granato, adjunct professor at Politecnico di Milano, Studio Ibsen, Italy, and Gerda Antanaitytė and Andrius Laurinaitis from Studio Altitudes from Lithuania. So to start the discussion, and I'm moderator, Andrius Ropolas. Yes. And to start the discussion, I asked both of you two groups, Italian and Lithuanian, to have a short presentation so we could have a better understanding of each other, of what is happening in northern part of Europe and southern part of Europe. And then later on, we could continue the conversation and discussion and maybe ask each other why things are so different or so similar. So Adriana, if you could start with a...
Hello. Thank you, Andrius. I'm very happy to have been invited to this conversation, and I love this grammar mistake that you have made in the title, See the Future. Of course, I'm joking. It's very interesting, the idea that this fluid land is our future, because it is in many different ways. So my idea today is to enter a little bit the understanding of what we as Southern Europeans consider our sea, the Mediterranean, and yes, to start a conversation about how we can connect, what we can learn from each other. So my presentation, the title of my presentation is Mediterraneus. Now we'll see it. Let's just check out. I think you just need to. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so that's what we're looking at, our sea region. Of course, with these different contracts, it really appears as a land with little, not so little dots in it. And you just understand from this picture how small it is compared to many other sea and ocean lands. So that's all the base of our connection. And now when I say our connection is this Southern Europe, Northern Africa, and Asian connection throughout this fluid land. I really like the idea that this is fluid land, because everything in the past was happening thanks to the Mediterranean Sea. I want to start this conversation with a quote from Fernand Braudel, that is one of the most important historian of the 20th century. He basically just redefined the way of making history, without just looking at dates and facts, but connecting it with geography, climate, and going understanding the relationship between population and territory, which is, for us, it's quite banal, but it was not at the time that he started this research. And his masterpiece is the Mediterranean and the Mediterranean world in the age of Philip II. So it's from 49, the first edition. And this quote comes from this first masterpiece, where he asked himself, what is the Mediterranean? And the answer, it's a dozen things at once, not a sea, but a succession of sea, not a civilization, but a civilization piled upon another. And so back now here, we cannot see any division between one country, not historical, not contemporary, because it's a layering, and it's very difficult to understand the perception of borders. In the conversation we had before coming here in Venice to talk, we were trying to understand what is the different perception of the sea from the Italian perspective, my own personal perspective, which I think could be quite Southern European perspective, or the Lithuanian perspective. And there is something very different that we feel the sea as a continuation, like it's nothing less than the land. And we measure the land compared to the distances with the sea, which relates, you know, to all the areas. And we feel, we all feel European, but in this part of Europe, this bond with the sea territory, it's very strong. It's a way of measure. So if Mediterranean places do exist, and we'll see if they exist now. I think this is one of the questions for now for us. What makes them so? And is it possible to define the characteristic of Mediterranean architecture? So, of course, this key question has been asked many times, and it's very difficult to talk about the relationship between the sea and the land in such overlayered area. No? But for sure, we can say that it hasn't been so important forever. The strong connection with the Mediterranean culture started at the end of the 18th century, when the Grand Tour, which would move people around Europe, would stop at Naples, more or less. So now we consider basic to visit Greece, to know, you know, all the Northern African coast, and what can be all the archaeology of the whole area around the Mediterranean. But we have to think that this hasn't been, let's say, historically discovered, historicized before that moment. So before, basically, the discovery of Herculaneum and Pompeii and Winkelmann's theory of classical art. So it's quite recent if we compare it to the history of historiography, this shift for the traditional itinerary of the Grand Tour to look south. Okay, so I just wanted to point out this because it's important to understand perceptions. There would be a lot to say about the Grand Tour. No, it's something that even now we as architects, we do. It's not exactly as it was before, but we feel the task to, you know, go and visit the classical period, Greece, Rome. And the same has been for many centuries from that moment on. So from, let's say, at the beginning of the 1800s, the expansion of this idea of, you know, finding the future in the past was there. The neoclassicism was born in that moment, no? And there were many even strange typos in that kind of architecture, no? Thinking about the ruin as a white body, which wasn't, no, it was fully colored, it just faded. So there was even some misunderstanding. And the way the architects approached their knowledge till that time was reproductive, in the sense that it was a discovery. But there has been a lot of time before arriving to an interpretation of the spaces that they were judging, okay? And I believe not just me, like the first architect that understood the essence of Mediterranean architecture was Schinkel, which you would say, but that's completely neoclassical, no? It's like the whitish columns, and it's very difficult to judge from a facade. Why? Because the real idea underneath his architecture was the composition of the space, as Mediterranean architecture would do. And in this sense, the Mediterranean architecture is no more the classical architecture, is no more monumental and temples, but is the way the perishable Mediterranean architecture worked with spaces, in the aggregation of spaces. So if you do a radiography of Schinkel work, you would find out that the relationship between spaces, it's incredibly Mediterranean. And now it's starting to be beautiful, no? Because we're taking things from the south and already going. So I tried to find someone that would push, this kind of concept more north. And of course, there would be so many examples, but we have limited space here, and I wanted to pick few of them, maybe the most, the strongest, like Adolf Loos. The idea of the Raumplan is incredibly Mediterranean. So when I say, I think the essence of Mediterranean architecture is the aggregation of space, the way, the simplicity, the fluidity, of aggregation, which is not the only characteristic, of course, of Mediterranean architecture, but is what interests me in how the Northern European architects would see, the Southern Mediterranean architecture. So Adolf Loos was, of course, let's say, worked and studied Schinkel and reinterpreted it. He traveled in Italy, even, for sourcing materials, etc. But the main thing is the study of what came before. I'm sorry for the image, but of course to step out of the conversation, we need to talk about Le Corbusier. There's nothing to do because in his idea there was not just the reinterpretation of the Mediterranean world, but there was a statement. He wanted to understand what this kind of perception and even ideology of architecture, like, want to kind of rebuild it. We know it was a little bit megalomaniac. So the idea of, grabbing in one own theory all the characteristic of what is Mediterranean was always there in his mind. And you can understand it a lot from his sketches, this very fast picture of how he would connect. So not just the monument itself, but the construction of the landscape. Now we add another layer, the landscape of Mediterranean architecture, which we know is pretty different from the northern area of Europe. We were already, speaking about that. So the idea of the levels, the path towards something up, or the path going down, or the landscape that you see from a window. He researched for a lot of time and visited many monasteries, and basing his study about the human volume with these buildings, and always in connection with the land. To arrive to this little piece that I don't know if you ever seen from inside. I'm sure you know the Cabanon in Roquebrune-Cap-Martin, south of France. That was his little hut in front of the sea. It's just this volume that you see. I'm not showing one room in a big villa. I'm showing the villa. I'm showing the space. So this was built for himself. So you understand how essential an architect, like even, Le Corbusier, would synthesize the idea of the essential space for a human. And that is exactly a room, a Mediterranean room. Okay, so this is something very, very strong that then he condensed, of course, in verse Architectura. But talking with this on word, and we arrive now in a phase where, of course, all the architects started to pay attention to what was happening in the relationship with Southern architecture. In 1933, the Congress of Modern Architecture was held in between Greece and Marseille. We sailed through the highland, the Cyclades. There, a profound and ancient life has remained intact. We discover eternal houses, living houses of today that go back through history, whose section and plans are exactly those we had been imagining for 10 years. So he basically thinks he's rediscovering something that has been discovered millennia before. Okay, so the simplicity of this kind of architecture. In this cradle of human measure in Greece, in this blessed land of decency, intimacy, well-being, and of rationality, always guided by the joy of living, the true measures of the human scale are present, okay? So I think we need to remember this as for our conversation as the essence of what I think really synthesizes the discovery of modern architecture towards the South. This is the poster from the fourth Chiam, no? And they, a number, I think more than 100 architects joined the Siam in a ship. So it's, more levels of symbolism. And this so corresponds even to Le Corbusier idea, for example, of, using the ships as the basic dwelling, a way of looking how to build, because this is another big chapter. I'm a ship designer, my friends knows. And this is kind of another architecture it's completely different one. And then I just open little brackets here. It's very interesting that in naval design, we follow one regulation all around the world, and it joins all the country, and it's the most globalized regulation of the world, which is, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, because it's a good one, US regulation. But it represents to me the possibility of agreeing on a global level on something. So apart from that, so ships design was very interesting at the time, and there was this layering of symbols of, being in a ship, crossing the sea, getting to Athens, looking at the past as an architecture that they could then bring back to all the countries where this architect would come from. And of course, now I'm taking the Italian example because we are here to talk about our relationship between Italy and Lithuania. So my focus is to understand how this experience, for example, how this phase in architecture to steal from the Mediterranean architecture, or to embrace more than steal the idea of a Mediterranean architecture without being vernacular or rural, but being extremely modern, became after that very important Siam a strong emphasis in the Italian background in architecture. From the very first day, an idea long in the making became to the surface, the idea of a Mediterranean architecture and the expectation of an architecture of the Mediterranean that would ensure as an affirmation of this century, embracing and synthesizing that style that has been the style that has been so ardently sought. So it's a contemporary thing for us, Mediterranean architecture. Colors, plants, climate, the sense of earth, and the sky can be defined by a single formula subject only to slight longitudinal variation and nuances. Variation, it's another key point of contemporary architecture, modern architecture, variation on one same thing, no? And here in this quote from Quadrante, the magazine that I showed you before, it was connecting the island of Hydra to Amalfi. They seem just behind the succulent plants and palms of Varigotti, which is in Liguria. It's close to south of France. Look as though transplanted to Metana. The small graceful houses with their tiny windows share the same touch of white or pink or blue. And when the paint is no longer fresh, it is the same sun with the same intensity that has taken care to soften the tone with an identical fading throughout the entire Mediterranean. So now there is these slides of pictures where we see what they were looking at. Of course, the Parthenon, of course, all the great monument of the past. But what they were analyzing as a Mediterranean architecture were the little towns, the walls, the thresholds, the encounters between the street and the building, the relationship between the out and the in. And I will be very happy to understand, for example, this relationship in the Lithuanian word and something. And this, of course, has a relationship with the sea, with the view, with the land, even if it was extremely functional, no? So that is what we as architects from in the last century and a half learned from the relationship with the sea, the idea of something that is a continuation of the land, something that where we can walk in. So there is a very strong connection. These are, as we see, many aggregation of volumes, of simple volumes, the use of simple corners and connections. And again, Peresutti, another important architect, before the Second World War, was speaking about this geometry that speaks. Architecture as a Mediterranean spirit, no? That compose the Acropolis and the human lines with colors and forms of nature from Libya to Capri. So it's like very, very strong connection. So this, let's say, of course, the beautiful past, but what's about the new Mediterranean architecture? And here I thought to just put a challenge, so not really to talk about some projects or buildings, or let's say they are projects, they are buildings, of course, but it's more than that. It's the idea of the coastal line as something that can be completely humanized. Of course, we had to do it for many ports, for many problems. Netherlands would teach us that. But nowadays, in some of, in the Southern European areas, we are reclaiming the land of the sea. This is the last project from Renzo Piano in Monte Carlo, in Monaco. And all this platform that you see, it's not on the land, it's on the sea. So it's a land reclamation project. It's stealing, of course, we are talking about the Principate of Monaco. It's a very small country with very high value of real estate. They needed to build more because they needed more money to sell, more building to sell. And of course, they did that. So I challenge you with these kind of images to understand if this is Mediterranean, this is on the sea, this is there, this is, it must have, the same relationship with the sea. But do we really think this is a good relationship with the sea? I'm going fast because I'm out of time already. Of course, another type of architecture, the energy architecture, let's say, of course, this would be even I mean, we'll discuss about that. It's something very visible in the sea, but as a good purpose. But for example, in our Adriatic Sea, we have a very, very strong architecture that is the petrol platform. And if you look at that, it's a masterpiece of design. It's incredible, no? How it is built and the mechanism that is done. It is not by architect. It's a second Rudowski, architecture without architects, no? But in a very different perspective. It reminds me of some Mollino on the mountain, on the Italian mountains. Same thing here. So the shapes that these elements are taking, which are incredibly big, but of course it doesn't even look out of scale because they are in the middle of the sea, no? Incredible in any terms, in my opinions, but still they hide a way of living, relationship are dead, no? You are alone in a platform taking petrol from the land. And another big point of our southern world right now, the centers where immigrants are let's say, hosted, if we can say so, which they correspond a little bit more to a simple architecture, but I wouldn't say in good terms. No? So this is, for example, another big point. I'm sure that in parallel you would have, I don't know, the data centers. Of course, we're talking about human lives and data, so it's much different. But still, you know, this kind of incredibly functional, like merely functional architecture. Which, you know, is not done for a community, is done to divide instead of letting it in. So that's my final two slides. This space of relationship, I like to compare these two images. From the Mediterranean Sea, this is a project from Clean. It's a company that works on mapping and visualization of different layering on reality. And this is the project about the sea path of different kind of ships and both. And you can see how the Mediterranean, it's busy, incredibly busy, no? And what I was saying, no, it's why we have the perception that is land, because it is. You can walk in these white lines. They are always full of platform that can carry you around. And then the comparison to start the conversation with you guys, with Lithuania, which is not busy at all. So on one end, we are very envy. On the other ends, we're like, I mean, the curiosity of the perception of a sea, which is less busy, just brings me to, you know, to ask you, what do you think about our roots as Mediterranean and compared to your perspective with climate, geography, and communal life. Okay, so because this is the synthesis of Mediterranean architecture, Southern European architecture, but Mediterranean because it's more than Southern European, of course. And I would say that the idea of you know, simple functionalism, climate, geography, and communal life are key. So I'm very interested to understand what can be, you know, if those keys can open the dialogue and understand what is the difference with the Northern Sea. Thank you.
So thank you, Adriana. Just for some people who are new here, we are having discussion between Lithuanian and Italian architects discussing the Baltic Sea situation with the Mediterranean Sea situation, like what we think are the the most important seas in Europe and the conditions and differences. So Adriana, thank you for finishing the Mediterranean part. And now Lithuanians, start with your Baltic Sea insights, and we'll see how it compares and how it is different. And maybe we can later on continue with discussing the differences with life and perception of the sea. Gerda and Andrius, yes, please.
So good morning, good afternoon for everybody. First of all, we are very grateful to be here, and thank you for Lithuanian National Institute and Andrius for inviting us. We are architects from Lithuania, Andrius Laurinaitis and me, Gerda. And today, I really liked Adriana's, one of the last quotes where you wrote, is there still Mediterranean architecture? So the opposite question raised for me, is there already Baltic architecture? So I will try to be quick and run through the slides. So as we saw at Adriana's presentation, we know, probably everybody knows, Italian expressive coastline, expressive silhouette, and even in this map, which is borrowed from OpenSea Maps website, we can see marked ports of Italy and other European main ports. And Lithuania is on the northern part of the Europe. And this is our coastline. So it's exactly 99 kilometers. And we cannot say that we have very rich marine history or rich marine traditions. And as a funny slide, like a joke, I put this one. It's the image of Lithuanian border from 15th century. It's our greatest times where our Duke Vytautas conquered so much land that it even reached the Black Sea. And we have the legend that his horses drank from the Black Sea. But I think that horses do not drink salty water. So it shows like perception, our perception and relationship with all the marine cultures. So you can see Baltic Sea coast and that Black Sea coast, which are very, very little, and the rest is the land. We do love land, we do love forests, lakes, but sea is still something new for us. But I think that we really enjoy being there. And the traditions just beginning. So the current situation, you can see this is our coastal line. Half of it belongs to, it's taken by Curonian Spit, which is protected by UNESCO territory. It's on the southern part, and on the northern part we have a regional park, we have a lot of forests, we have natural dunes, and some recreational towns. And Lithuania has one main port city, which is called Klaipėda, and we are from there. We live in this town. And here we mark the boundaries of the town. And if you look at the map, you may see that, okay, it has, the city is long. It has quite a lot of water line, so it should have that water life which comes into the city. Even in the streets grid, you can see that some streets are coming directly to the water, so it should be like a vivid port city. But the thing is that since it's the only town, the port town, it has very strong strategical value. And when the port was built, actually, this is the fence of the line, which is the city is fenced from the water. So you may see that almost all the urban area is fenced from the water. And we have just a few points where the city can emerge into and have that direct connection with the water. And it's those points where you can go to the other side, to the Curonian Spit, our beautiful natural landscape. And the one is in the old town, and the other is in the new ferry terminal. So the new ferry terminal is one of our projects that we wanted to share a little bit more. It was originally it was built in 1980s, and the situation was like that until 2018. And since the traffic was getting really heavy, they decided to rebuild first of all the paths that leads to the ferries, and then they decided to take to make a competition for the new ferry terminal. Because the old building was already out of date and they wanted something new, and we were lucky enough that we were invited to that competition. And the only reason for us, the only, let's say, logical option, what we thought was to design, to take as much waterland as we can. Because when you enter to the Lithuania through the water gates, through the sea gates, all you can see is that raw industry, which, and you don't, how to say, you see raw port industry, but you don't see city port. So we thought if we will take our part to build something urban, something like a beautiful building that represents the city, not the industry, it's the perfect spot for doing that. And since it is the gate to the other side, we didn't want to block the views. So how to mix it? So the only logical decision was to raise the building up and to build the bridge instead of building. And when we participated in the competition, to be honest, we didn't expect to win at all. We thought since it's the state company, no one will want to build this idea because it's expensive. It's quite irrational, and they will pick the more logical and more economically reasonable project. But we were lucky enough that they decided to make a statement. They understood the value of this place. And so we started to design the building. And the other very important thing is public spaces. We want to put points that this building and this area should be, first of all, for public use. So we designed two small plazas, also the public terrace that leads through the open air stairs. So you can come, you can farewell ships, and it's like a public building. And another thing is the expression. We wanted to keep it simple and to use those steel trusses to remind that we still are on the port side, on that industrial area, but on the other hand, we implemented some natural elements from the Curonian spit, like landscape, like some soft shapes. So it's the mix. It's like a gate to the other side, and the place where cars are going through, we made like a small atrium to look through and to remember that to make somehow that attractive point, the terrace. So the construction began. It began on 2023, and it should end, if we are lucky enough, on 2026. It's the current view of the construction site and some images of the process. So as Andrius mentioned, that this is the most beautiful pictures because it's the raw concept, and all the rest is just decoration. So this is the process and how it's it looks like now in the silhouette of the lagoon. And the other projects are completely opposite to this one, to the ferry terminal, because it's on the other side. It's on that UNESCO protected very natural landscape, and these are like sightseeing terraces to enjoy the views. And it's in completely natural atmosphere. So the first one is there was former burnt out forest, and we have a car park lot, and from where you lead the very narrow and small pathway, which ends up with the terrace, and the terrace catches you and elevates slightly and brings back to the path. So it's like a small loop that you can come and you can enjoy. And from this point, you can see the same port, but from very beautiful natural surrounding. The second one is Cormoran, the sightseeing terrace of cormoran nesting place. Cormorants are very peculiar birds. I don't know how many of you know them, but they eat a lot of fish, and the acidic droppings kill forests around them. So, but on the other hand, it's somehow interesting and beautiful. It creates interesting and beautiful that surrounding, and the national park wanted to have a like tiny terrace. The roof was, of course, obligatory. So the design was made like two terraces with a small bench and the roof, and a lot of stairs. And the third one is on the dune, on the slope, and it's also like a balcony. All the materials are very natural. It's very rhythmic, wood structures, and very, very simple. Actually, all the shapes are primarily it's all round. It's a square, so it's not to make something very not to overwhelm the beautiful nature. And I must tell that this project was, we are part of Zaviša Foundation, and colleagues, architects were also Aurimas Baužys and Algimantas Rybelis. So that's it about our coast.
Thank you. I think it was very interesting. For new people who just came here, we are having a discussion between Lithuanian and Italian architects about the Mediterranean and Baltic seas. One southern sea separating what, let's say, Europe from Northern Africa, which is an issue, I think, and another one which is highly politicized and tensioned with all the military activities in the Baltics and all the Scandinavia and Baltic countries. So thank you for Gerda and Andrius for Lithuanian side of view. And maybe you can also ask questions to each other. What do you think?
I have some, I have to say. It was
Okay,
very
please
interesting
start.
to look at your projects. Even if I'm not, of course, an expert of Northern architecture, I can see that there is the same will in the way you work with architecture that many Mediterranean architects had to understand the historical architecture in terms of the rhythm, the use of wood. So I see two different things. Of course, the first project, it's quite strong and big in scale and different in function. And then the other one are more delicate. But I would define all of them very gentle. Because the first one, it looked to me as the reinterpretation of an industrial aesthetics which of course corresponds not just an aesthetic. No, I'm saying that you really got to have that kind of industrial feeling, which is related to that port, that condition. But at the same time, there is gentleness, no, with the idea of this suspended bridge and the pass through. So I really feel that, and of course in the other projects, which are very subtle, very light. No, when you see them, for sure, they've been. I mean, they will be heavy enough for the place, but still, I see what is my idea of maybe the Baltic architecture, synthesized in these two big things, no, about the industrial, so all the big ports of the northern European Sea, and then instead the gentleness of structures that are wooden, that looks, less strong than what, for example, we have, the masonry, the bricks and mortar, and that kind of rhythm. So first of all, I just wanted to share my interpretation, but so my question is, even if you during the process that led you to design, what is your research process? Do you arrive to this interpretation with consciousness, or do you feel that as Lithuanians you had it in your hands, like it's more a research based, or it's just very normal for you to work with wood? How do you work with this?
I guess there could be multiple approaches to that, because both ways are correct. Sometimes you do research on the site, sometimes the research falls into your hands, like in the UNESCO site area. So intuitively, you know what to do and what not to do. It's sort of like built into your intuition. And I guess it was in the same way with the ferry building, because the silhouette and the structure was there already in the city, in the elevation of the port. So we had to extract it in a way, if you know what I mean. So
maybe I will add up that I think what we're missing is that residential architecture, or that lifestyle, that it's very seamless from the sea, as you showed those tiny villages that are on exactly on the coast, and you have that flawless life, human and coast life. So probably we have or very that sensitive approach to the architecture and to construction, like in Cronian Spit, where you are very gentle and you try not to build it too much, and you want to, first of all, to see the nature but not the architecture. And on the other side, on the port side, it's completely different, because you have that very when they built port, they didn't look at all those natural things. So they just said, let's build constructions, let's build containers, and that's it. So with that terminal, we wanted to show that we can use that logic of the port, but let's make it sensitive. Let's, I would say, the context is port, but we bring humans in there. So it was something like that.
and also I'd like to maybe expand a bit what happens around this the port if we took the port out of the coastline, because you asked about the relationship with the people and the coast. So during the Soviet times, the coastline was state-controlled leisure area. So in with the focus on mass accommodation and communal approach towards leisure. So large pioneer camps, large sanatoriums, and there was a right to be next to the sea, but behind that there was a still big social division where wealthy people or elite could go to the better resorts, and the regular workers could go only to the rest of the coastline. And in a way, we still see that today, where those wealthy resorts are still very wealthy. The land prices are extremely high, and in a way, the local residents are not meant to, but have to cater for the tourism. And as a result, they've become very seasonal cities. So very lively during the summer and close to dead during winter times. So
What, if I may, you almost don't need moderator, I feel, but because I'm also very curious and want to ask questions also myself. What I found similar in both of your presentations, you both talked, I think, I sense that key issue was not the issue, but maybe focus was the public life. Even you, Adriana, you showed also something was not really public, but it was really, I sense that what you said, Mediterranean architecture also is from the communal very much approach. Corbu house, even if it's for himself, it's still for being there as a living by the water. So I sense there's this similarity that. But then I'm wondering, we all are here architects, so we all want public, we all want this. But so my question is, what is the reality? Is it getting less public in both of your contexts? Is it getting more public? Is it, let's say, fake public where it's public, but it's so protected that people cannot enter there? There's different approaches. So we, as architects, you also showed your designs where you create this access, more public spaces there, but what's the reality? For example, Adriana, you showed, land reclamation projects. Is land reclaimed for public use, or is it for harbor, or is it for, private?
So, of course, there are public path around, but the project is built on a private base, because the business plan should, drive everything. So yes, you can walk on the new coastline, and yeah, it's pleasant to see the sea from there. But the meaning inside, it's not public. You don't feel it's public at all. It's like this public street that crosses that area, you feel in a bubble, no? You feel that the sea is private, and you're there, just say, excuse me, I'm just passing, I'm going. So yes, absolutely, Mediterranean architecture is public in the sense that the wall is the street. You would sit out on I'm sure you've seen pictures from the past in southern European countries. You would leave the street. So the house is for sleeping, but your day is outside, because you have the climate, because so the level of publicity of the space, it's super high. And that's even why the houses were small. They were small even because we are talking about, the most common houses, not monuments, but for sure they were small. So we have today the problem of a great gentrification of our coastal line, which is crazy. And the right to the sea, it's always less there. Of course, it's considered a public area, but in Italy, the state has the right to give it in as management license to private. And there are very long pieces of coastline in Lazio, for example, in Tuscany, where you don't see the sea when you walk, because this privatized land, this land with a license, they can just put a wall and you don't see. I was pretty curious about how that fence that you mentioned would look like, because there should be a very strong difference between the the first shore, the one that is not the UNESCO one, so the one that is fenced, and then the second, line, the UNESCO area. Just to close and finalize my answer. So yes, incredibly problematic in terms of gentrification and a real privatization of public land. You're not allowed to build closer to 200 meters from the sea. So this is now set in the Italian law since a lot of time, but still it is becoming always more something for few and for rich. So some of the most important monuments and UNESCO areas of Italy are almost off the grid because you need to be very rich to pay an hotel to get there, etc. So this is a very strong gentrification, and of course it's a problem and it's against communal life.
Okay, so for us, maybe since we have very, very little coastal line, so during the time we didn't, we didn't urbanize it, and we have very wide line where you cannot build nothing. So the forest, the coastal line, the dunes, the paths are all public, but there's almost no architecture. So the most precious sea line areas are not urbanized, and this is probably the main difference because we perceive sea as completely recreational. Of course, we have those like Palanga, Šventoji, those recreational towns where people buy houses, their summer houses, and they live there, but still you have, all the seaside is completely public. So you can come, you can enjoy it, and this is the reason probably because we have it so little.
Just to add that the access to water is the right for us. So you cannot enclose the coastline. You cannot have a private beach, or it's the same for the lakes as well. So everyone knows that they can go through if they want to.
But to add, as I'm a Lithuanian, also in Lithuania, you have it's open, it's public, but it's very restricted. You cannot have a tent, you cannot have a fire. If it's dunes, you cannot even walk on dunes. So it's
no mediation.
It's public. It's access for everybody, but you cannot go there. And this is, I guess, what was your point of architecture. So you made architecture for looking, because you cannot even walk there. You can only observe with your eyes, touch with your eyes architecture, and then that's it.
So because I guess that stripe of land, it's a dune environment. So it's,
yeah.
I mean, that should be probably a balance, because then, of course, looking it's good, but even big in the sea, it's quite, no, it's a little bit the contrary. We have, of course, if we talk about the full Mediterranean coast, there are so many different things. In Italy, we have dunal environment, etc. There are restrictions in few of them, but in general, you can walk. The problem is when the public and the state gave too many licenses to block the view, because of course, like in theory, it's public. No? So we have, like, if you go to someone and say, oh, it's public land, but then if in practice you allow, 1,000 private owners to get their piece of land so that you walk 100 meters without looking at the sea, it's not public anymore. I want to, incredibly, in just last week, I've been called to contribute to a very nice project that is in the Belgium coast. I think it's comparable even to your coast. They had, I think, a kind of perception problem of the coastline and the relationship with the sea. And since now few years, they built this Beaufort triennial, where they ask artists from Europe or around the world to do a permanent piece on in different spots of the coastline. I really invite you to look at it. I will collaborate to the 2027 edition, but it's beautiful in the way that you take advantage, you kind of reappropriate with beautiful pieces. Of course, we can talk, there will be the most gentle and the least, but still it's a very beautiful way to connect the identity of the people with the shore, with the coastline and the sea. It's like, a landscape of art that they are building. It's not so full, of course, not that we have to imagine, but walking, there is a cycle path through all the coastal line of Belgium with already 100 pieces of art to see. So it's incredible. And I think it's a very good example for that area of Europe nowadays.
Yes, yeah. The Belgians, they also have this. They really work. Also, they are prepared for like, let's say, climate impact for the sea, and they are preparing this huge projects. I know about how to mitigate the rising sea levels. So here comes my next question. Is Italy doing something about it? Is it, like you said, Adriana, the sea is continuation of the land, and it's very important, and you measure the distance everywhere inland, how far it is from the sea. Does the new reality with the rising sea levels change that approach? I hear that you say land is being reclaimed, so people want to be there, but does it change architecture? Does it change approach? And it will be the same question for you, so you can think.
In line. No, of course, I think we are in the city that represents the fragility of this matter the most. I don't know, walking here, you saw the Acqua Alta is starting, no? And now we have a mechanism at Mose that is blocking it, but it was an enormous effort and expense and, engineers, and that will not completely block the risk that we have. So in this area, let's say we could, we really need to make everything artificial to work with this problem. There is not much to do there. We have a part of Italy where there is a Bradisism. It's close to Pompeii, actually, and Ercolano. In that area, historically, the land goes up and down. Like, yes, it's a phenomena, a geological phenomenon called Bradisism, that I think it's there and in Philippines, in 2 spots in the land. And they go down and up. So I think we need to use this example when we will need, because it's becoming always more difficult with the erosion and the rising level to gain land. In that sense, there is not still a deep interest from the public sector on this. I think, as in many other places in the world, we're all scared, we're all there, but in practical terms, nothing happens.
Lots of talk, no action.
Yes, it's beautiful to talk. It's marvelous that the Italian pavilion is talking about the sea and the relationship with the sea. I believe in a bulimic way. This is not selective. I'm here telling you so. Please, when you have something to say, be selective enough to get it, because it's so important. Because then, there are many beautiful things to see, but you don't really get, okay, what kind of solutions are we providing, or like what is our vision for the future? We still don't see it.
But you're saying it's important, but why is it important? Because it will be flooded? Because we will lose the nature? What are the risks here in, let's say, in Italy? Why it is important?
Basically, there are many spots of land in lagunas that risk flooding. More I think important for now, it's the temperature of the sea. So now the thing that is more urgent is the fact that the fauna of the sea is changing because the temperature are rising. And this will change our way of eating, is changing. You know, there are species that are coming that are kind of contaminating our species, and this it's already. And then of course there is another problem, a layered problem, that all these transports line that we were looking at, all these big ships and container ships, they bring different species from very far seas. For example, we have the problem of the blue crab. I don't know if you have heard about it. We have 1,000 kilos of this blue crab that arrived. We didn't find any competitor in the Mediterranean Sea, and it started to kill, you know, all the endemic species. And now, and of course, there were funds from Europe to kill the blue crown. And what to do? Let's eat it. The human can eat it. No, it's food for cats. Okay, so this, we finally got it. So I mean, yes, we're doing something. It's you know, very.
So the main strategy, what I hear for Italians with the change of sea is food, cuisine.
100%, always. But yes, everything is changing, and the temperature, it's really making it very difficult to work with the sea, to have the same relationship that we had before.
Yes, it's good that you mentioned the temperature, because when the temperatures rise, you've got more algae in the sea or in the lagoon, and at the same time the fishes are dying, and that, worst of all, the tourists are complaining. But just kidding. But with all the seriousness, I'm not aware that at least our local government have even talked about the rising sea level, even though if it goes up, our city is the first to go. There's no chat. There are no plans being developed. So the focus is somewhere else, but there. So.
But like in general, the public perception, so not just architects, the public perception of the problem of land, because, for example, here, I think in new generation, it's quite visible. I don't know if in Lithuanian, in general, the problem of environmental condition, warming, etc. And we finally have a new measure of New York. So from that, I hope something will change even in Europe, because we really need some different and a new approach to this. But now we just feel like broken records to, you know, always think and talk about that, but nothing really is happening. I think we as architects, we still need to talk. Talking, it's always the first start of the conversation. So we'll continue to bring this to life, at least, so that we don't forget it. But it is true that in professional life, it's a challenge. For example, I design cruise ship, so I'm the first guilty person here. You know, it's like how to face that. So you're asked to be a designer of a cruise ship, which you know is going to bring this problem even to a higher level. So what you do, and what I believe it's the only way of answering the questions of our client, is to be inside the system and against the system. We cannot say no to a project because it implies something difficult in environmental terms. We should know everything about that to make even the smallest change. So I think this is the only way we can challenge that.
But maybe this is the solution. Maybe we should all move to the cruise ships and enjoy the life.
I hope not. I have to say, being, you know, when you design that and you understand there are many things that are interesting, the processes, and it could be, you can learn a lot. But of course, the number of materials that you use and the way this kind of tourism use the land, it's still to challenge. We are doing it from our, I'm the art director of this group, and we are trying not to work just on architecture, but in the perception of the land from the guest, because this is the problem, no? The touch and go. So this destroys cultures. And so now that I'm inside this sector, I ask myself what to do, and I work in different levels. Architecture is one in terms but I mean, it's a very strange thing. I always keep Le Corbusier in mind, the minimum dwelling and everything. But the reality, I think the strongest thing that we can do is design in a way that they are pushed to study what they're going to see, to touch the land in a good way.
I was curious to hear about the Lithuanian situation where it will be the first flooded. Of course, it's by the sea, so it will be first flooded. So we have one example already in the world with Jakarta, where it's hopeless. And it was, idea is just do nothing, let's abandon the city. It's a mess, which I agree, it's a mess. It's the worst city, I think, in the world. It's hopeless. Sorry for all the Indonesians here. I mean, everybody faces that reality. We need to rebuild. What would be your suggestions for the mayor, I don't know, government of, let's say, Lithuania? Because you said nobody is doing anything. What would be your first advice? What should be done to address the issue? Or it's inevitable and we should take example from Indonesia and we're like, we'll be flooded in 100 years. Let's build city somewhere else.
I don't know, it's a hard question because I saw at least the local government, how they look like. It's like 4 years when we are in, and after it's let it flood. I think that of course we should it should come from the national government somehow, the decision to control the level and
Yeah, I think thinking about it would be a good start, because at least like focusing some resources on that, because at the moment the main discussion is about like expanding the port, reclaiming some area from the sea and building the extension of the port. So at least giving some resources to focus on the other problem at hand would be a good start. Starting is the best thing to do right now.
Yeah, no, it's challenging always, being in this position that we're there, and some of the people think that we still have the authority of, the architects in the 30s, that we go to the municipality and say, we want this, let's do this. I mean, you really need now, we're very super specialized. Politics is not incredibly interested in understanding different point of view. Anyway, there is always something to do. And as I was saying before, yeah, maybe, the national company of architects in Lithuania, sorry for mistaking the name, but I mean, all these kind of institutions that are in between us architects and, higher level can help. And I think they're helping even with these kind of conversations. But of course, setting this in the public agenda of a city, it's always difficult because everyone tends to postpone. No, you have more urgent problems. Like, let's see. And as you said, then we are flooded, and we will be waiting for the sea in Milano. It's going to be comfortable because we don't have the sea. When you're flooded, at least we become a sea city. That's done. So, no, it's quite tough even for them and even for politicians to agree on something. And unfortunately, the geopolitical condition right now doesn't allow us to speak about things that are urgent because we are, completely swallowed by a number of other things, so that we can think, so that we just lose our attention on important matters. So it's a very complex matter. For sure, I think the shoreline, European shoreline, and even our borders have been threatened lately, and how the geopolitical power of Europe has been threatened as well from, Russia, and the idea, the drones, and we're asking ourselves whether rearming or not. I mean, I think starting from really re-understanding the importance of architecture. Of course, we're saying it because we are architects, but really to reappropriate with the land, and without giving permission to something that is completely out of scale, something that is not contextual, etc. It's the first step to build identities. I believe, for example, your projects are going towards this direction, no? Towards a new Lithuanian architecture, which I still don't know much, but I'm happy to understand. So, I mean, we are in the battle. We have to do something.
As we have, I think, approaching, I would like to go maybe to at least maybe one of the last questions I have, and maybe expand even more. And what I notice, even like here and some structures around, I see that we as architects, well, for the end, I would like to be self-critical. So I see that as architects, we are lately becoming very fascinated with all these temporary structures, all these pavilions, all these small objects, and especially this, I think, this fascination with like projects by Marina Tabassum or Kunlea Dayami, who were also exhibited at Venice with the floating school and so on, and where everything is based on temporary structures. So do you think, why are we so fascinated with this architecture? And is this a proper solution to something, this type of architecture? Or is it just a very temporal, small fix for now? Like you said, the government 4 years ahead, we fix this problem and we don't look further. So how do you approach this? I don't know. I don't want to, criticize those two architects, but overall, as a profession, our shift to this temporal structures and being sensitive to communities, but in the end, is it really giving anything in the long run?
I think we're fascinated by temporary structures mainly because they have a luxury to be radical and to act as a prototype, to test things out. I don't think they have to be a long-term solution to things, but as a vehicle to testing things out to see if they work. That's a fundamental function of the temporary structures, I think. So we could see that this is the way or not the way to move forward. So I think that's why we find them interesting. They are lots of various questions asked and answered through temporary structures.
I totally agree, because you don't have to put a lot of effort, a lot of money just to test. And also, yes, I think yesterday we talked about that example of our temporary bridge in Klaipėda, in our town, that there may be 40 years of discussion about should we build the bridge here or shouldn't we? And it's all the protected that heritage area, and there are people who say we don't need it. It will be enough bridges that we have. And the government, what they did, they from scaffolding structure, they built temporary bridge in exact place where it should be according to all the city plans, and it works. It perfectly works. And all the community, they were asking to extend the staying of the bridge, because they first of all they designed it for a few weeks. They built it, and then they left it for the rest of the summer, and then they demolished it just now because community wanted to have it for longer. So it's very good example how in very simple and cheap way you can test ideas, and also it's very good argument later. You can show the results, the flows, and you say, look, it works, let's build it.
No, for sure, building a temporary structure can be a functional tool for something. I do agree with Andrius that there is even something more on the fashion terms. No, it's like maybe it deletes a little bit that guilt of building that we all have. You know, we all know that the most sustainable thing we can do is not building, not destroying, not moving anything. Okay, so every time you take a brick, it's like I'm wasting a resource. It's like, so of course when you do temporary, it's you feel like, oh no, it's just temporary. Then no one will kill me because it's all this environmental anxiety. It's not there because it's temporary. So on one side, it works well with this thing. On there is, there are so many layers on this question. There are, for example, you quoted Marina Tabassum. Marina Tabassum was trying to solve one of the most difficult political issues with the temporary structure. And with the node of metal that everyone around Bangladesh could connect with bamboo. Like, I mean, it was a crazy idea to help nomadic, that kind of nomadism that derives from the environmental problem that they have with the river. So that it's incredibly, important, and these kind of projects are welcome. Then there is, of course, the idea of temporary. I think if we extend this temporary structure, I believe the 90% of architecture that we are doing in geological terms are incredibly temporary. But even in, thinking about the perspective of some 100 years are super temporary. We are building ruins. We are building with the material that we know since 100 years, that is concrete. This is incredible. And we still don't know how long the life of these, buildings will be. So in this kind, so I understand your question was more on the short-term temporary structure. And I do and I agree that sometimes even in this context like Biennale, we want to say how beautiful we are and how gentle we are with the land, because we cannot look at the fact that we are tools of the power and we are tools of capitalism, and we have to build, and there are foundations, and some of these very light temporary structure as piles in the land. No? So I mean, there is all this part, and then there is instead, if we extend the technological term of temporary, we are still building with something that we really 100% don't understand. All the insulation made from plastic materials and this and that. And I am afraid many times in this context, like Biennale, Triennale, and we don't see real architecture. I was very critical, for example, with our African Biennale some times ago, because, presenting African architecture, I work in Africa, I do luxury resort in Africa. There's a huge market of luxury resort and big market of concrete real estate buildings, and you couldn't see that. It's like, oh, look, there's this installation that's so nice. No, let's look around. No. Architecture is political, it's heavy, it's strong, it stays there for a lot. So this doesn't mean that we need to go just on temporary but I think that two extremes are the most kind of sustainable approach if we want to use this label. Either it's really temporary, and you are solving an issue, or you using it as a tool, as you were saying, or it's permanent, like Roman basilicas, and we are there. Now we are always in the mid-term, we don't know.
So I really love that we finished with this a little bit critique also to the Biennale and what we do as architects, and we became a little bit self-critical, and maybe this showed that we understand that sometimes we also do bad things, and I think it's important to say not to be afraid to tell that and to understand that. And like you said, sometimes it's important to start talking about things, raising the questions. Maybe it's the first step. So thank you all for coming. Our speakers have been Gerda Antanaitytė, Andrius Laurinaitis from Altitudes Studio in Lithuania, Adriana Granato from adjunct professor at Politecnico di Milano from Studio Ibsen, and I was Andrius Ropolas, and the talk was presented by Lithuanian National Institute of Architecture, and we have been hosted here by the Biennale Architettura 2025 GENS public program. Thank you.